I am doing a channel update during a Let's Play. Basically, for my own reasons, just because, I'm using Conway's Game of Life, as noted during episode 1, to talk about life. And, part of that is this channel now. So, might as well give you all an update and give you some of my thoughts. This is the Acorn, which is something I brought up. Now, OBS game capture is it appears to only be capturing the window, which right now is just showing the Acorn. It's just 7, not exactly pixels there, but arranged in a certain fashion and called the Acorn because it, starts off small and then it grows into something far more complex, as we shall see now. Now, you see it's starting to grow, shift and change, and so I will do my best to stay on track with that. If I click, it'll zoom out, but we don't need to at this stage. Yeah, so it's kind of early days yet. I've got it on a quarter of a second delay, as opposed to the last episode was 1 second delay, just to kind of keep things stepping. But yeah, got a lot going on right now because I've got WavePad in addition to OBS. I checked the settings, so my snowball mic is actually working. I recorded episode 16 of Bugbag yesterday, and for whatever reason, OBS was working on, I guess, desktop audio rather than my snowball mic. But, it didn't capture any of me talking at all for 73 minutes. It was very disheartening. When I get episode 16 down and done, I'm going to have to do it like I did months ago, when I wasn't able to talk live while playing, and talk over my own gameplay, which is far less spontaneous. No less rewarding, I should hope. I should hope it was still entertaining, especially once I got the audio quality up. Speaking of entertaining, we have our first glider and the second one going off of the Acorn. So those will go off into infinity, since there's nothing there to stop them. That's quite beautiful, or troubling, depending on your outlook. But as with life, a lot of it depends on outlook, and my outlook towards the Bugbag series has changed a bit. I fear it might start to be becoming a chore, trying to keep up on a weekly schedule, even though, again, it's my favorite game. But I don't like the time pressure. It was great, earlier this summer when I had a bit of a backlog, and then I could just, schedule things and put them out there. That was pretty much like the whole better part of July. In fact, was mostly done at once and then scheduled. Even, taking twice the time to record, talking over my footage as I'm about to do. But now it's also the fact that I want to branch out the channel a bit more. Because, yeah, watching Sorcerer Dave and his Fathus Oven Let's Play, is what made me think, okay, I have to, share these stories, that I want to share with you. We have our third glider here, beautiful. And I also realize, though, that there's other things that I want to do, and that if I can share that with you, I would be quite pleased. One of these is obviously Conway's Game of Life, but there are other things that entails. There will be book reviews. One is The Cursive Universe. One is a textbook on, I believe it's cellular automata, one of which is Conway's Game of Life. A lot of it is in Python, written by Dr. Sayama, forgive me, his first name escapes me. I should like to talk with him. I'll get the chance after I finish actually getting through his book. Got it for Christmas like a year or two ago. It was a splendid gift. I've been able to kind of skim it a bit. I really need to sit down and work through it. But that's after I get through some other books that I'm reading either for work or for my own edification in other respects. So as I get into more of the cellular automata stuff, I also wanted to do or rather start a Let's Play of While True Learn, because I had a few hours, but OBS was, it was giving me trouble with game captures. I probably could have done a full screen capture and been alright, but it didn't occur to me because I was just getting so terribly frustrated. But I blame Windows, as I tend to do in these cases, and often quite rightly so, it turns out. Enough that I was considering, it's kind of funny, you hardly ever see anyone using unregistered Hypercam 2.0 nowadays, but it would be pretty cool to have that as a callback. I kind of wish I had a mind to start a channel back in those days, for those of you who are old enough to know what I'm talking about. But, it didn't occur to me, that I had much to say or much that I wanted to say. I tend to vacillate between wanting to be silent and wanting to say something. And at least, now I've got at least something out there. And hopefully that's better than nothing. You get a bit of an internal riot going on, as we see here. And so, I'll try and write something or have, make a bit of music. Shout out again to my second channel, Bugbag Music. Which is stuff that I largely was making in like 2011 through 2016. And I'm only just starting to make that stuff again, or make sense of it, really, and get it out to all of you, even though a lot of it was published before on SoundCloud for ages, and dozens of you have been aware of it, some of whom I know personally, some not. And yes, indeed. We are on almost generation 1500 of this, and it's still going strong, so that's good. It gives me a lot of time to talk and think. And I forget exactly how many generations this goes on for. I've seen it once or twice. But, yes, so branching out. Bugbag, executive decision, at least on through the rest of the calendar year. I want to make Bugbag a every other week series, and then that'll give me time to read books. I've read 14 books this year so far, but I want to get through more. I've got at least 100 unread books just laying about the house, unread or partially read or whatever, just stuff that I've always wanted to know, questions I've had for a very long time. And even though I'm no 3 Blue 1 Brown, even though I'm no, But Why, that's a good channel that I've only recently found because of his video on 52 Factorial, and he has some stuff on quantum electrodynamic reflection of light, which I'm barely starting to understand. He gets into like the sinusoidal wave behavior of light particles, of photons, which if I do want to get into quantum computing, that'll be another thing to branch out into if I can. I have a couple of books on the subject, and I should like to try Q Sharp, and Qiskit, in due time, and just to see and take it as far as I can go, because that's been very exciting, of course, for a lot of people for a very long time, and see what the possibilities are, as comes to exploring a lot of possibilities, because as we can see here, the game of life as we see it here is very deterministic. But if there is one thing to be learned from quantum theory, it's that, you can have Laplace's demon to a point, certainly as regards, very, very highly probable events perhaps, but there always be just even a teensy chance of a wrench in the works, and things going very, very far away from what you could expect. Now, I'm not, I feel like when I was reading The Recursive Universe that I could be one of those people who, for example, like you see people who make Conway's Game of Life, play Conway's Game of Life for people who make an alarm clock. There are videos of that on YouTube, which are quite entertaining and a bit edifying. It's kind of like those people, there's one person who figured out how to do old school ray tracing in Factorio. I am not at that level. Even though one could conceivably, for example, possibly if they entered into this deeply enough, perhaps predict that the Acorn would have unfolded in this particular way from those mere 7 pixels that you may recall that we had, or about 10 minutes ago. We're at generation 2300 some. It's still going strong. Gliders going off into infinity now. I've lost count. I don't know if we have a dozen or more going out there. I could probably zoom out and see, and how many gliders will have fizzled out as well. That's about to go into there and probably start a whole new chain reaction, as it were. And the thing is, with real life, it's even more unpredictable than this. So if I had started a channel back in the day, who knows where I'd be now? I'd probably be a very different person. If I didn't have those quiet, reflective moments, which is what I think is what I'm really after in making Bugbag and Every Other Week series. Time to grow, time to think on deeper things. Weird studies, so I brought up a few times. Or similarly taking a September hiatus, to deal with other projects. A couple of other people I follow are doing the same. And fall has always been a rather hectic time for me between, holidays, birthdays, Halloween, that'll be good. And the start of school, that always kind of makes this, the most hectic time of year. So I think I need to kind of take a step back, decompress, reflect, and make sure that I'm not losing track on other things that I want to do for the sake of keeping Bugbag going. Even though I do, but I don't want it to be a chore. So it's going to be just a matter of finding that balance, and that with, a whole bunch of other personal matters that I will not discuss. Even though I had a mind to, but no thanks. So let's just sit back, watch the pixels grow and move, and you kind of see, sort of quasi-spaceship things going. Sometimes they're more symmetrical. This is not exactly degraded. That's the thing. Like, when people see something going from symmetrical to asymmetrical, you could view it as either a sort of degradation or perhaps just a different sort of growth. I guess it's all a matter of not necessarily, it's not entirely relativistic. Like, it would be relativistic in the meta sense to say that, there are different outlooks. Well, which outlook do you subscribe to? I was originally perhaps of the sort that was more interested in the asymmetrical growth, which, mathematically, conceptually is perhaps more interesting, but aesthetically, the symmetrical stuff is, perhaps has a bit more value, because then it becomes easier to predict and easier to interpret, which is kind of the more, I guess, old school outlook on aesthetics, but that's kind of where I've been drifting for the past however many years. And even then, I thought that this would erupt, and no, it just settled down into, I forget the name of these things. That's the thing, people have been studying Conway's Game of Life a lot more closely than I have for now. For example, these are like your blinkers, and when you get them in a pattern of 4 like this, there's a special name for that, and there's special names for all these different kinds of, they remind me of, if you look at plant cells, especially leaves close enough, and the little stomata, is it? That leaves kind of breathe through. That's what I've always associated them with, if you look at leaves under an electron microscope. it's been hard for me to shake, even though there are other names for these things. Or like ponds, maybe ponds or puddles, or what people call them or think of them as. Possibly, bacteria that have been submerged in ether, or is it butterflies that people sadly do in ether? Because that's the thing. That's something that I was recently marinating on about. For example, certain, and this is kind of tying into my professional work, but let's say you have a software project or whatever, or data project, and you try and, for example, put it under certain lock and key to prevent user error, understandably so. But then that just kind of prevents one from, having that dynamic sense of the thing, and being able to adjust and learn more from it on the fly. So at which point, do you kind of lock things down and say, okay, enough is enough? And then at which point do you have to kind of let things, sit and see, how things flow? It's a discussion I should really be having with my team. But, and obviously, if you're in this yourselves, have your own discussions with your own team about this sort of philosophical thing. There might be a best practice out there that I'm simply not aware of yet. I'm a bit new to all this stuff. I need to scroll this guy a bit upwards and follow the action here with you, because this is starting to branch out a little ways up. Not to the point where I have to zoom out again yet, because this is stable down here. But it might grow and shift and change all the way to the other end. How many? 17 minutes already. Beautiful. My oh my. And all this from 7 pixels. But that's kind of what I hope for from the channel too. In terms of branching out, is that, it can start with a small idea, small to something, and who knows where it'll go. Become rather a big fan of Wendigoon, for example, and like him, I would be quite surprised to have 100 subscribers someday. The only difference is that I will probably top out about there at the rate I'm going. But it is what it is. Sometimes the algorithm, you hit on something that people want to see, and and then people just kind of jump on it, and maybe that's your one big thing, and you kind of get to be a bit of a one-hit wonder, as it were, at least with respect to a certain, like, for example, there was always talk of one-hit wonders on VH1. Well, that was as defined in the American market. Whereas in Europe, for example, Aha had a lot more hits than Take On Me. So even then, and now we're back to the relativism thing, aren't we? But, well, yeah, actually, speaking of, let's zoom out a tad. Start taking another look. Yeah, we get away from the grid lines here, which is pretty nice. There's got to be a way to disable them in Golly. I wish you could see what I'm seeing, because it's just in the game capture getting the window with all of the stuff, but you could see, for example, Golly is something I highly recommend, and I will probably have to do a bonus episode on the website. I believe it's golly.sourceforge.net. I could check that right now, but I kind of want to watch the action. Zoom in again so we get a better sense of the thing. Yeah, so this is, well, I spoke too soon, before I saw it. Okay, so there's some action happening here. So this is not necessarily going to remain stable. And then it's kind of flowed down from here after spinning off some gliders. I could watch this all day, but I don't want to jinx it and wind up doing exactly that, especially since it's not even daytime anymore. At least not, not at present. I'll probably schedule this for tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. Even though if I do go to the every other week thing, that'll leave me with nothing for the 18th of September, but, that's part of the point, I guess. Yeah. Programming languages, I do Want to do some more content on that as well, and if you have any suggestions, like I have some stuff for functional programming I've been trying to get into for years. I read the Little Schemer years ago, and it was smooth sailing up until the last chapter. They explained the Y Combinator, which is one of those things like monads. Like if you see the computer file video on monads, it's like a lot of other explanations I've seen about it, where it's like, if you're someone who's explaining it, you already understand it. And you're explaining it kind of in such a way that, anyone who already understands it will get it. But if you don't get it, then, you're still not left understanding it. Okay, so this is the only active portion now. You probably can't see my cursor. I'll have to check that on the video later. But we'll see. It's got a lot of room to kick off into other things, as it's doing right now, and see if things fizzle out or not. We're already almost at 5,000 generations here. This is brilliant. This is a lot more than we had with the with episode 1, which had a lot more to start with, as you'll remember, in terms of pixels. But then a lot of it fizzled out early on, especially just because, it was spread out for legibility. Like if I was maybe to do bubble letters, we could have had a lot more going on. I've done that before, and I should do it again if I do any more phrases. But it's a bit tougher to do on the phone, But yeah, this is just very entertaining to me. I mean, you can probably get a sense of the kind of child I was, that this is the type of stuff I like to watch. But, it was a time and a place between Conway's Game of Life, going on to the computer, and the Mandelbrot set and the Julia set, getting the chance to explore that as a kid, and Sim Earth, even little things like kid stuff like Sim Town, Sim Park, Sim Tower. Wonderful game that was. I need to get into Project High Rise too, come to think of it. That'll be fun. Got that ages ago, and many of the DLC on some kind of summer sale. Yeah. Good times ahead. Even more than I thought. Getting some good ideas here. I will have to write those down. And yeah, okay, so we just have a little bit more to watch here. We're over 5,000 generations. I will have to hit the stop button as soon as, or, as close to the end of the activity as I can. But, there we are. We're at about 50, we are now currently at 5,209 generations. Zooming in when I don't intend to. So it's zoom out, in fact, with the mouse wheel. I don't know how far out some of these gliders will have gone. Yeah. And then that might be it. But, now it's getting to be not exactly like the Mandelbrot set in a sense, but certainly, the sense of scale. We're zooming in on a galaxy. Okay, let's try and center this guy. And zoom in again. Okay, so it doesn't seem that big, but then you realize how far out those teeny little gliders are, those little 5-pixel glider guys, and how much then was going on here. Have I lost it? Whoop. Need to zoom out again. Yeah, far too low. All that from just 7 pixels. And, a lot of blinkers going on, so let's say if I get it going again. Yeah, but it's stable. It's stable now. So let's reset and reflect all that from this, Whereas if I was to do a straight line of 7 pixels, it wouldn't have gone nearly as far. That could be a good episode 2B, or not 2B, maybe episode 3. But in the meantime, that's our channel update. Bugbag, every other week. More content like this, I'll be kind of learning as I go, so I apologize for any errors. Hopefully some Project High Rise, other games, actual puzzle games. I have some OXO footage as well that I have to talk over, but I'll probably let most of that speak for itself. It's kind of embarrassing to do OXO, OXXO. Great game, but I get stuck for a while, and then I'll breeze through a few levels and get stuck again. And even with a level, there's something which is so obvious in retrospect, and which, will probably have the audience kind of frustrated, and then eventually satisfied, so get a bit of tension and relaxation there. But stuff which, might seem obvious to you, not initially obvious to me, but that's just kind of a ride that we'll take together. And if you like the looks of the game and think you can beat it faster than me, then I encourage you to get it. You probably get it in less playtime than I have, because I've been playing it on and off, more off than on lately for a while now. And zeroing in on the end, gotten through dozens of levels, have a couple dozen more to go. More puzzle games, more math, more music on the music channel, music talk, hopefully. It'll all be from a layman's perspective, and just even with what I do in my day job, just kind of feeling like there's so much more to learn. And that, I guess, really is what this is all about. Sharing that enthusiasm with you, from a little acorn who knows what you're going to get. And with that, good people, I thank you for watching, and I bid you farewell.